Hey guys, Boss Ramos, and this Sunday, the Miami Dolphins got their seventh win of the season, and it is Week 16. Man, oh man, it's been a tough season for this Dolphins team, but you know, capping off their home record at 5-3 at home, not so bad given the circumstances. They had two really ugly losses at home. One of them to the Buffalo Bills, which was a blowout, and the game that Tua got concussed. Then the following home game against the Tennessee Titans, which ugly game. And then last but not least, the loss to the Arizona Cardinals, which was a game-winning field goal essentially for the Arizona Cardinals. So not so bad at home for the Miami Dolphins. You know they can perform well in Miami. Now the question is, can they perform well on the road? And that's something that's going to come up to you know to debate coming up soon, because that's it. This was their final home game. They got two more road games. They need to win these. They need things to go their way to continue on this playoff push. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it happens. But things are going to go their way. They need the Denver Broncos to lose their next two games, and they need the Colts to lose one of their next two, because Colts got to win today as well. So that's a tough one. But that's not what you guys are here to see. You guys are here to see the post-game review against the San Francisco 49ers, where the Dolphins won 29-17. And it was a relatively close game until the very end. And that pretty much sums up most of these Miami Dolphins wins. It's a lot of close games that either favor the Miami Dolphins or don't. And, luckily this time, Dolphins came out on the flip side of that and were able to get a big time win. So let's talk about it. The Miami Dolphins team stats here. We got Miami Dolphins 22 first downs compared to the San Francisco 49ers 20. Let's see, third down efficiency. 49ers were 5 of 13. Meanwhile, the Dolphins are 4 of 12. Fourth down efficiency. The 49ers are 0 for 1 on fourth down. Dolphins did not have to try to convert a fourth down. Moving down the list, the 49ers had a turnover. They also had 11 penalties for 90 yards, 6 penalties for 45 yards for the Miami Dolphins. That's a big discrepancy there. And time of possession, 49ers had the ball for 26 minutes, 54 seconds. Miami Dolphins had it for 33 minutes and 6 seconds. When you control the time of possession, you win the turnover battle, and you have more yardage, just a little bit. Dolphins had 381 total yards. The 49ers had 374. You would hope that your team comes out on top, and that's what the Miami Dolphins did. They came out on top in this one, and it was large in part due to the fact that the 49ers were pretty banged up. I feel like if this 49ers team was less injured, if they had at least Jordan Mason or Isaac Orlando, they would have been a completely different story when it comes to how either team performed, especially on the ground game. Now, let's talk about this game. Let's get into the highlight. And like I say each and every week, if it seems like the highlight jumps, is because YouTube forced me to remove some of this highlight. So with that being said, let's get into it. We have Mike McDaniel versus Kyle Shanahan, the prodigy against the leader. But 49ers were able to assert their will early in this game and get the first touchdown of the game. Deebo Samuel powering his way into the end zone, but the Dolphins were not satisfied. Tyreek Hill was able to get into the end zone, and he revved up this Dolphins team and started leading them in a very good way. And then to cap it off, in one of the final Dolphin drives, Devon Achane gets a 50-plus yard touchdown. Really puts the nail in the coffin for this matchup. Tua takes a knee and is able to get Mike McDaniel and Kyle Shanahan dapping up on midfield. Lots of history between those two guys, mostly because Kyle Shanahan pretty much gave Mike McDaniel all the keys and how to, be a relative successful coach in the NFL. And, he learned a lot from him. and they worked alongside each other a long time. So that was a cool thing to see between those two. Anytime those two face off against each other, I think it's always cool to just see, you know, Mike McDaniel play against the Sean McVays, the Matt LaFleurs, and the Kyle Shanahan's of the world, just because those are the guys that he worked with, and it was very prominent, you know, being alongside those guys. So to see the fact that, you know, Dolphins were able to come out on top on this one, really big time. It really sets back the San Francisco 49ers, because you have the Rams, who are 9-6, and the 49ers right now are 4-9, which is not 6-9, and it's not where they want to be at all. And injury riddled season, and just things just going very right. Like Campbell walking off the field and pretty much essentially quitting on the team, and just getting cut the next week. It's just tough. With that being said, let's talk about some of the box score stats and individual players. We have Brock Purdy with the 49ers going 26 of 40. He had 313 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, sacked 3 times for a loss of 20. Meanwhile, on the other hand, you got Tua going 22 of 34, 215 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and was not sacked a single time. Not so bad for Tua, but I wish I would have seen a little bit more out of him. The way this offense has been going as of late, it hasn't been very, how can you say, like, just Tua hasn't been the dominating factor in terms of how this offense has been going as of late. And it's a little bit upsetting. But let's continue on. We got Brock Purdy leading the 49ers in rushing, which is insane to say. 4 carries, 26 total yards. Deebo Samuel after him, 5 carries, 25 yards. Patrick Taylor Jr., 8 carries, 24. And Kyle Juszczyk, 1 carry for 6 yards, totaling for 81 total yards on the ground for the 49ers. I kind of said it. They were going to, implement Deebo running the ball a little bit more, and they did. The Dolphins were able to limit that rushing attack, which is big time, keeping this 49ers team to essentially under 80 yards. I will discount the Kyle Juszczyk 6-yard run. Aside from that, the Dolphins able to hold this 49ers team to under 80 yards of rushing is big time. Meanwhile, the Dolphins were able to surpass 100 yards on the ground, probably for the first time in forever, honestly. And it was all by Devon Achane. 17 carries, 120 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. He had that big rushing touchdown that you saw in the highlight for 50 total yards. But overall, Dolphins had 166 yards on the ground. That was assisted by Raheem Mostert with his 8 carries for 31 yards. Jeff Wilson with 2 carries for 12. Alec McGold 1 carry for 4. And Tua had 2 carries for -1 yards. Meanwhile, 49ers had a big game receiving, and it was led by George Kittle, which, a little bit concerns me in terms of the Miami Dolphins and covering, prominent tight ends like George Kittle. He was able to get 8 receptions for 106 yards, longest of 28. And you also have Deebo Samuel with 7 carries, 7 receptions for 96 total yards, and a touchdown. Jawan Jennings had some big-time catches, 4 receptions for 51. Ricky Pearsall, 4 receptions for 37. Kyle Juszczyk, 1 reception for 20. And then Eric Sosberg had 1 reception for 2. And Patrick Taylor had 1 reception for 1. Meanwhile, the Miami Dolphins' leading receiver was Devon Achane, leading both on the ground and in the air. 6 receptions for 70 total yards. You also have Jonas Smith, 6 receptions for 62. Tyreek Hill, 3 receptions for 29 and a touchdown. Malik Washington, 3 receptions for 28. Raheem Mostert, 2 receptions for 15. You also have River Craycraft and Durham Smythe both getting 1 reception for about 11 yards between the two. Now let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. Tua did fumble, but he also did recover it. But to the 49ers' credit, you have Fred Warner being the leading tackler with 11 total tackles, 6 solo. And then moving down the list, we also have Ricardo Green with 10 total, 7 solo, and 1 pass deflection. Key stats for the 49ers, you have D. Winters, with 1 pass deflection. Nick Bosa with a tackle for a loss. Demondre Lanier with 1 pass deflection. Demetrius Flanagan fouls with a tackle for a loss and a pass deflection. Jordan Elliott with a tackle for a loss. And then last but not least, Tre'Davious Ward with a pass deflection. Meanwhile, the Dolphins don't have a double-digit tackler today, but, their defense was efficient enough to not need that. And that's kind of hard to say when the 49ers were having 313 passing yards, but they were limiting a lot of those passes. Let's start off with Jordan Brooks, leading tackler for the Miami Dolphins, 7 total, 4 solo. He had a sack, a tackle for a loss, and a QB hit. After him was Jordan Porter with 7 total, 3 solo. And then after that, let's get into some key stats. We have Emmanuel Ogba with a QB hit. Kendall Fuller had a pass deflection. Zach Sealer had a sack and a tackle for a loss, 2 QB hits. Javon Holland had a pass deflection late in the 4th. Calais Campbell had a QB hit. Chop Robinson was able to notch a sack, tackle for a loss, pass deflection, and a QB hit. And then last but not least, Kader who had a big pass deflection. And he also had a big-time interception. That was a big key here, where Kader who was able to come up with that interception. In terms of kick returns, Malik Washington had a kick return for 32 total yards. And then punt returns, Jacob Crowning had a return for 8. And Malik Washington also had 2 returns for 15 total yards. Kicking, Jake Moody went 1 for 2 on field goals, longest of 21, and 2 for 2 on extra points. Meanwhile, Jason Sanders, 5 for 5 on field goals, and 2 for 2 on extra points. Jason Sanders' longest field goal was 54 total yards. And then last but not least, the punting. Pat O'Donnell had 4 punts for 180 total yards, one of which was in the 20, longest of 51. And then Jake Bailey had 2 punts for 98 total yards, one of which was in the 20 and longest of 58. Now, guys, each and every week I give key moments on how this Dolphins can win the game. And the keys to victory this week was to stop the 49ers run game, win the turnover battle, don't commit too many turnovers, and run the freaking football. And guess what? Dolphins hit the jackpot this week. They were able to stop the run. They did not commit any turnovers, and they were able to run the freaking football. Amazing. You can't ask much for a team who's pretty much on the fritz and are hoping on other teams' downfall to get into the playoffs. But as far as things go for the Miami Dolphins, they can only control what they can control, and that is to win the rest of their games. And it all started this week against the San Francisco 49ers. So, with that being said, I was very pleased with how the Dolphins played today. They're able to handle a decent team like the 49ers. I understand they're pretty injury riddled right now. But with all that being said, played a pretty sound game of football, and the things that mattered the most, aka running the football, winning the turnover battle, stopping the run game, that was big time. And I understand. Said it again, and it is that the 49ers are injured. It's true. But at the end of the day, Dolphins went out there, they performed well, and they were able to get a double-digit win against this 49ers team. And you can't ask for much because this Dolphins team has been notorious for letting down in these crucial, gimme type of games. So, with all that being said, I'm very happy and very pleased. And so it's amazing to see that they were able to achieve all my 3 keys to victory because they barely ever do so. But aside from that, I was very happy with this win. And yeah, that's pretty much it moving forward. 7-8 Miami Dolphins. They need the Broncos to lose the rest of their games. They need the Colts to lose just one. And they need to win the remainder of the games. And they end up in the playoffs. Now, does that happen? I don't think so. I think the Broncos spoil everything next week. But one can only wish. One can only wish. That pretty much sums up this post-game review Hope you guys enjoyed it, and come back next week for the next Dolphins game preview. With all that being said, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what was your favorite moment of this Miami Dolphins win. Catch you in the next one.